Hello, ladies and gents, boys and girls, people of all ages, sexualities, and identities, and welcome back to another film review. And today's film review is none other than Hoppers. So, what is Hoppers about? Well, think about Avatar for a second. Think about Ready Player One. And think about pretty much any film that has allowed you to go into a simulation that will allow you to interact with people that you wouldn't usually be able to interact with. That's Hoppers. Hoppers follows the story of a young girl named Mabel, who has an affiliation and a great embrace for nature, creatures big and small, and all animal life. When Mabel was very, very young, she got in trouble in school for trying to set her class pets free. She is then sent to her grandmother's, to which she decides eventually to move into. Her grandmother shares the same love and embrace for nature as she does. And the two of them use the glade as a place that they can come and feel utter peace. However, Mabel becomes very truant in her later years, and so she finds herself coming into contact with the science team at her university. They begin to whinge at her for the fact that she is very truant in everything that goes on, from lessons to lessons to lessons. However, it turns out during Mabel's time at the university slash college, whatever you want to call it, she finds herself in a situation in which she constantly begins to fight the mayor named Jerry. Jerry wants to build one giant bridge across the town to pretty much link places to places. However, Mabel is obsessed with the glade and so she won't let it happen. We find ourselves in a situation in which Mabel ends up discovering that one of the scientists has come up with a way to interact with the animals completely by pretending to be one of them. Mabel jumps into the chair and becomes a very small beaver. Now, another key thing I think that you should know as I go along telling you the story of this is that the town they live in is ironically called Beaverton. Mabel manages to go into the forest and interact with the animals. When she tries to convince a beaver to go back to the glade, he kind of ums it off and ignores her. Then he almost gets eaten by a giant bear, which then causes Mabel to be brought to the Beaver King because she has interrupted the kind of circle of life slash kingdom of the animals. Once she is confronted by the king of the beavers, she begins to rant on about the fact that they should rise up against the humans. The Beaver King explains the reason that the animals don't go to the glade is because something seems to be keeping them out, something with a very loud noise. Mabel discovers that it turns out that the humans have put giant speaker boxes that have noise effectors that only interrupt animals' hearing. Think of this a little bit like a dog whistle. Mabel manages to break one of these down and then goes back to the council of all the animals and begins to beg them to fight back against the human beings. However, what she doesn't take into consideration is by doing this, the animals will want to kill the human beings rather than just scare them out of their wits. When Mabel realizes what has happened, she ends up accidentally killing the Butterfly Queen and causing the Butterfly Queen's son to go rogue. After trying to save Jerry from the Alliance, Mabel finds herself in a situation in which she eventually wakes up back in her human body and upset and disappointed the Beaver King. He feels betrayed, he feels lied to, and most importantly, he feels like his friend has truly died. However, later when we find out that the caterpillar slash son of the Butterfly Queen has decided to force the scientists into building giant human machines, especially one for himself, so that he can disguise himself as Jerry and go and kill all the humans with their own noise machine. Mabel and the others eventually manage to break out of their kind of entrapment and attack back the fake Jerry. After defeating our nemesis, we find ourselves in a situation, however, where everything comes crashing down and a giant fire outbreaks into the forest. Mabel, with the help of the Beaver King, manages to go up into the forest and pretty much break down the dam and flood the streets with water to save everyone and the inhabitants. Mabel then ends the whole story going back to the Glade and meeting up with Jerry, and also before that getting a job with the scientists. After they were fired from her university for meddling in things they didn't understand, they find themselves in a situation where they have much more ideas of other things to invent in the future. One of these things on the board being the collar from Up that will be around a dog to allow it to talk. So, Hoppers, what did I think of this Pixar film in general? I really like this film. It's an adventurous story using a lot of real life elements and sticking to this kind of core basis of how do we tell a story and relate it to the real world. Yes, we have the Avatar element that definitely makes it a little bit sci-fi-ish, but other than that, a lot of the elements from the water to the dams to the animals themselves and how much they've done good research on the animals and their instincts really shows how dedicated Pixar were to making this story very relatable to the world. Not only does it tell a story that humans and animals should work alike, especially during a disaster, but it also shows that human beings should treat animals and their inhabitants with the same respect as they treat their own homes. And for that reason, I give Hoppers a solid 10 out of 10. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next film review. Till then, stay beautiful, you beautiful people.